At this point, we will return to the Basement Sublet of Horror.
And now our interview with Crematia Mortem. Crematia Mortem was the host of Kansas City's horror host show Creature Feature from 1981 to 1988. Crematia, good evening and welcome to Channel News.
Hello, boys and ghouls. This is Crematia Mortem.
How did Crematia Mortem get her name?
Crematia got her name from Walt Bodine. The very famous Walt Bodine, the dean of Kansas City Broadcasting. She was searching for a name appropriate to her energy. And her friend Roberta came up with the name Crematia and said, that should be your first name. Walt Bodine gave her last name, Mortem. And for a while she was married, but she was a hyphenate, Crematia Post-Mortem. But I just kept my married name for simplicity's sake, you know.
If you don't mind, could you give us a brief history of Creature Feature?
I don't know that a brief history is possible because there was so much packed into those 9 years. But the Creature Feature began on Kansas City 41 in 1982 and ran until January 1st of 1990. And I'm Crematia Mortem, and I was the hostess of the Creature Feature the whole time that it was on the air, which is a good thing because there wasn't anyone quite like me, you know. And the show was shown every Saturday night at 10:30. And then it got later and later, then 11 o'clock, and then at 12 o'clock, and then it just, poof, disappeared. So that was the history.
Can you tell our audience more about your background?
My background? Well, my mother's name was Desiree. I have a sister named Cremora. I have a weird cousin Henry and a manservant named Dweeb. And Rasputin helps me from time to time as well. That's the only background that's relevant. I have no other skills, so my family has to help me.
Could you tell our viewers about the opening sequence of your program?
Well, the opening sequence of the show changed from year to year. When I first started, of course, the camera just opened on me, standing next to this, I don't know if you can see it, this beautiful, well, this candelabra, which still, by the way, has the same candle wax on it that it had 17.5 years ago. The camera opened on me standing in front of the candelabra, and that was it. Low budget, don't you know? As the years progressed, we changed the opening sequence of the show to include art from some of our viewers, and of course some of the graphics people at Kansas City 41. We had to keep them employed, you know, but the art from the viewers opened the show year after year, and we would have a contest every year to see who could create the scariest painting that was used to open the Creature Feature.
Just out of curiosity, are there any unusual behind-the-scenes stories you'd like to tell us?
Well, when the Creature Feature came to an end, you know, every week I would step out of my coffin and say, "Good evening, boys and ghouls, it's time for another bad movie." Well, when the show was over, that coffin stayed in the KSHB studios for quite some time. They became an NBC affiliate, and Tom Brokaw came in to debut the station as an NBC station in Kansas City. And I wonder if he ever knew that while he was doing the nightly news, right there from Kansas City, there was a coffin behind the news set. He probably didn't know. I wonder what he would have thought if he did.
Did you feature any guests on your program?
I do remember one time we had a fellow who came on the show, and he had designed a giant monster costume made out of paper mache, and he got inside it on stilts. And we had some beautiful music playing, and I was supposed to look across the crowded room and see him and fall in love, and he was supposed to look at me and fall in love, and the music swelled, and I went, "Oh, my love, I've waited for you forever." And he looked at me and went, "Whoa," and began to walk across the set with these big clumping shoes of his, and he tripped on the rug, and all 8 feet of him fell like a tree, and you could hear it creaking as he fell over, and boom, he landed on the floor, and a big pile of dust went up, and from inside this giant paper mache thing I heard, "Can you get me out of here?" It was very funny, although I didn't laugh at the time, and he was fine.
Are there any remaining early episodes of your program?
No, well, there is some archival footage available, and I'm trying to compile that and make that available to viewers. But we were too cheap to record our shows and keep them every week. We would tape over the last week's show. So we didn't start archiving the shows until the very end of the Creature Feature, when we had 7 or 8 years under our belt. Every week in the beginning of the show, we would tape over what we had done last week. So there's really no record that I ever existed at all. Pity that.
Have you considered returning to television?
I'd love to come back. Ooh.
Are there any plans in the works now?
I've been talking with people. Unfortunately, the people haven't been listening all that much, but there have been some conversations about bringing Crematia and the Creature Feature back to Kansas City television. Stay tuned to this station for further details.
Thank you for visiting with us this evening, Crematia, and we hope that you are able to return to television again soon.
Ta-ta!